Harris drives on Caruso, hangs, fires, shoots, and makes it with 2.4 to go. And the Sixers beat the Lakers 107-106 on a game-winning shot by Tobias Harris. Oh, yeah!
Amazing moment, amazing call by our friend Tom McGinnis. 76ers, when last we saw them on Wednesday night, thrilling, dramatic, last-second victory over the best team in the NBA, the Los Angeles Lakers. Welcome to 7-6 Live Countdown, presented by Tissot. I'm Brian Seltzer. Lauren Rosen, great to see you. And I guess now we can ask the question, by virtue of the transitive property, are the 76ers, could they be considered the best team in the NBA? At the very least, amongst them?
I don't know if we can go that far. You might have to have the best record in the league, not among the best records in the league, but this 76ers team is the real deal. And beating the defending champion Los Angeles Lakers with LeBron James, with Anthony Davis on the court is a statement. Regardless of what might have or might not have happened in that fourth quarter, the Sixers made it happen against a really formidable opponent. And that is something that I am cool with celebrating for at least a couple days.
76ers go from facing the best team in the West, the Lakers, to the worst team in the West tonight, the Minnesota Timberwolves. We're going to dive into that matchup. But in terms of celebrating, Lauren, it's a sad day, especially in Philadelphia hoops and really across basketball. But also, despite the sadness of the passing of John Chaney, an opportunity to celebrate the legend that was. What a career, but more importantly, what a life led by the former head coach of the Temple Owls, who passed away earlier today at the age of 89. He led the Temple Owls from 1982 through 2006. He produced during that time nearly 24 NBA players and countless more who passed through the ranks of the NBA and summer leagues and training camps. But more importantly, it was what John Chaney as a man stood for. The 76ers releasing a statement earlier today saying, "We're deeply saddened by the passing of Philadelphia basketball legend John Chaney. Coach Chaney was a giant in our sport, taking Temple to 5 Elite Eights and eventually being inducted to the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame. He was one of the preeminent black coaches in the game, and more than that, he was a mentor and father figure to countless players and coaches in our city. Our sincerest condolences go out to the Chaney family and the Temple basketball community. He will be missed." Nice statement released by the Philadelphia 76ers earlier today following the passing of John Chaney. And it's amazing to me, Lauren, I'm in my mid-30s right now, that I kind of have to stop for a second because I realize some people who might be watching or streaming along don't really have a frame of reference for John Chaney. Just an iconic figure, the way he was with his personality, wore his heart on his sleeve, even the attire he wore at games sometimes, where it would be very much, at least towards the latter stages of his career, signature button-down white shirt, black tie, sometimes would throw a vest on, a black button-down vest. He was one of a kind, a person all his own. And I think that really what it comes down to is, yes, Temple won a lot under him and had great success. He's a Hall of Famer, but it was the way he went about his business and the impact he had on the lives of student athletes that he coached.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Just a giant in this game. And Doc Rivers, before he did his traditional media availability tonight, he opened up wanting to give homage to Chaney, saying that he didn't know him very well, but he had conversations with him, always admired him as a coach. And he said he was the type of coach that transcended basketball. It was never just about the game or what was happening between the lines. It was always about life and being a teacher and being a mentor. And Doc said that that's something he always really respected. And for me, it's always interesting to hear coaches talk about their counterparts. I think anytime Doc speaks about anyone, it carries a lot of weight, but especially today with the Philadelphia legend. And I think you might have a story yourself.
So I do, not that I would expect anyone to know this, but before I worked for the 76ers, I worked for Penn, and my first year or two, Chaney was still coaching, but my story doesn't even have any connection to that. When I was growing up in the suburbs of Philly, I worked at a tennis shop in Jenkintown, and one of our loyal customers was none other than John Chaney himself. So I think my first year working at the store, I was probably in 7th or 8th grade, and he came in. I'm a big basketball fan. I knew exactly who he was. I think I can't remember if I actually strung his tennis racket, but I did get to ring him up at the cash register. And I guess you could kind of tell that I was, you know, a little bit starstruck and in awe of him in the moment. And he was like, here, here. And this is like kind of, I'm doing my best voice impression of Chaney, like, come around back. I got something for you. So went out the back, went to the back of his car, and he said, I think I'm remembering this right, and I'm not making this up. He's like, I pretty much carry 3 things in the back of my car. I've got my tennis racket, I've got a case of beer, and I've got a stack of autographed photos. And he just handed me a pre-autographed photo of himself, a headshot with the John Chaney signature. So that's my John Chaney story.
That's awesome. He sounded like he was truly an amazing guy. And yes, a really sad day for the game, sad day for the city. But cool to hear all these stories that folks clearly have about someone who was really special.
Indeed. And before we move on to getting to tonight's game, I mean, just thinking for any fans out there who have followed the 76ers, in recent years, you know, there's obviously Aaron McKie, probably the most prominent former Temple player to go on to the 76ers over the last 20 years. But Mark Jackson, Will Cunningham, Rick Brunson never played with the 76ers, but he was a big success story out of Temple. Lavoy Allen, I believe, was recruited by Coach Chaney and then spent some time with the Sixers. Deontay Christmas as well. He was never in an NBA game with the Sixers, but played with the Sixers in Summer League and was always around the team. So definitely a legend, John Chaney, and what a legacy certainly left by Coach Chaney. All right. Minnesota Timberwolves, 76ers, getting down to where things stand for the Sixers. Things standing, Lauren, in a very good spot. The game on Wednesday was one of those type of performances where if you weren't paying attention to the 76ers, you most certainly are now. Their stars came to play. We saw Tobias Harris with the game winner, Joel Embiid, another solid stat line, Ben Simmons, a triple-double. All in all, the Sixers, they controlled the game. They had to fight to get it back at the end. It was nuts how it got to a point where the Lakers were leading with 11 seconds to go. But all in all, the Sixers came out on top.
Well, I liked what Doc Rivers said after the game. He said, obviously, you don't want to end up in the position that the Sixers were in, leading most of the game and then still having to fight with their final shot. But he did say that these are the champions. The Lakers are the defending champions do, not backing down from a fight. Doc said they're hard to kill, and they were indeed hard to kill, but the Sixers were able to deliver that final blow that you guys saw in the open through none other than Mr. Tobias Harris right here. And it was really cool, Celts, to listen to Tobias talk after the game because he said that's a shot he practices all the time. He had no doubt that it was going in.
Simmons finishing with 17 points, 11 rebounds, and 10 assists. And I thought Lauren Ben was critical, obviously, throughout the game, especially with his defense, but really in just setting the tone aggressively for the Sixers from the start. 3 driving layups to the basket plus dunks in the opening 2 minutes of play. I think that was a big part of setting the tone for the night for the Sixers.
And this is a group of guys that play well against these Los Angeles Lakers. We saw it last year at the center, almost exactly a year ahead of this game, where these, at least some of this group, really rose to the occasion against a great team. And I think all signs pointed to the Sixers really showing their potential. A lot of them discussed it after the game, Celts, the idea of strength of schedule, but this was an opportunity for them to say, look, we have played some good teams and we still made it happen. We got the win.
And I like, Lauren, how despite the fact Doc Rivers said before the game on Wednesday that he wasn't viewing the Lakers as any more significant of a measuring stick, a litmus test, barometer, whatever word or phrase you want to use, than other opponents. I like the fact that we heard from players going into the game and especially afterwards that they did view it as a challenge. They did view it as a mile marker about a quarter of the way into the season. And it seems like they went out and took the game seriously to that extent and in such a fashion.
I think so too. And this is a team that's won a lot of games. So they don't want to not be favored in a matchup. They don't want to hear that type of disrespect or doubt from the folks that decide who's favored in a matchup. And it was cool to see them know, okay, we're facing like a very strong, meaty opponent, and we're still going to get the victory. I loved the fight and the mettle that they showed down the stretch.
All right, let us hear from Doc Rivers after the game, breaking down the winning play, Tobias Harris with the wing jumper with 2.4 seconds to go.
Yeah, it was just a multiple option play. I thought Danny Green read it perfect. The first option, we set a pin down with Seth for Joel. We told him to give it a good look. If it's not there, threw it to Seth. Tobias slips into a pick and roll. They're switching everything. And whoever's on Tobias will be at the nail. And then we went flat. The spacing was great. So it was great that we worked the set down to the last option. Kind of nice to see that. Showed a little bit of composure.
And I think, Lauren, there's a huge payoff to going through something like that in terms of the gradual trust building between a new coach, his staff, and his players. 76ers were patient. They got their payoff. And listen, there's certain team sports where, as people like to say, it comes down to matchups. I think you can make that case for football and certainly in basketball. In that final play, Sixers got Tobias Harris on Caruso. They also had Ben Simmons on Schroeder on the block. That probably would have been a dangerous entry pass. And credits to Tobias for rising up and knocking down a shot that, like he said afterwards, he works on a lot.
And we're going to hear from Matisse Thybulle in a little bit for the sort of teammate take on that shot. But it was really awesome, in my opinion, to see the way the guys just embraced Tobias afterwards. They were thrilled to see him hit that shot because this is a group of players that know what Tobias Harris is capable of. But of course, when you're playing on a team with two other All-Stars, you're not always going to have the ball in your hands at the end of the game. And seeing Tobias get that opportunity, make the most of it, I think was really cool. And it was awesome to see the guys react the way that they did with so much enthusiasm.
And what, to me, Lauren, in a very symbolic way, that shot was on Wednesday night, just the culmination of this early stretch of the season where Tobias Harris putting people on notice. He has been playing so well for the Sixers, averaging 20 points, over 6.5 rebounds, nearly 3 assists per game, while shooting 52.5% from the field, better than 46% from three on a high volume number of attempts, and over 82% from the free throw line. He's the only player in the entire league who's hitting those splits. He's been spectacular, and I think he's making a big case for
the All-Star game, or lack thereof, but the All-Star bid. All-Star voting obviously opened up this week. If you are interested in supporting your 76ers, Ben, Joel, Tobias, definitely make sure you're using Twitter, use their names or their handles or hashtag their names and add hashtag NBA All-Star alongside your favorite player's name. These votes really do count. They really do matter. So make your voice heard if you want to see your favorite Sixers as All-Stars. How that will look this year, we don't know, but it is an honor every year, no matter what. And for Tobias Harris, it would be his first time. And I think there's no time like the present to make Tobias Harris an All-Star.
Yeah, and he's been on the cusp in the past, and he's so close this year, you have to believe. And I think it can only help him that the 76ers have had a handful of national television games so far. He's been performing well, and you hear commentators, and this, whether it's right or wrong, this stuff carries weight. Whether it's Mike Breen or Doris Burke or any of the guys on TNT, when they talk about Tobias in all-star terms, I think that only helps reinforce what, in this case, I believe is a deserved narrative that Tobias should really be making a push this year to get a selection that he's been close for in the past, but hasn't quite made yet.
Well, look, there's never a better time to hit a game-winning shot against the defending champion Los Angeles Lakers on national television than the night before All-Star voting opens. So you would hope that Tobias's excellent performance on Wednesday and big moment yielded some extra votes. But the voting obviously open now, will remain open. So hopefully the guys can keep showing what they showed on Wednesday, get some more votes, and get some All-Star bids.
You know what they say about a rising tide, it lifts all All-Star bids. Here's what Joel Embiid said after the game on Wednesday.
We've all been consistent. Obviously, being first in the East also helps, for our candidacy to all be All-Stars. But we're winning. We are doing it. We're doing it as a group, and we all deserve a chance.
I agree. Couldn't agree more. And I love to hear Joe carrying the All-Star selection flag for his fellow teammates like they're doing for him. And listen, I think if the 76ers continue collectively with the success at the rate that we've seen so far, it's only going to make the likelihood of having 3 potential All-Stars that much higher, whether that means the guys will be playing in some sort of competition or just merely get to add that designation to their resume. I think it would be a pretty nice thing.
You and I have talked about this plenty, Celts, but it is hard to get 3 players from the same team into the All-Star game. your best chance to do it is by leading the conference. And that's what the Sixers have done throughout the season. The only time they dipped back below was when they were missing most of their team. Now they're back handling the East. So if there's ever a time for the Sixers to get 3 All-Stars, it is now. Make sure you're putting your votes in. As always, we're sort of engaging with you guys in the chat, in the comments. Thank you for tuning in. Unfortunately, we do not have new information for you about whether or not Joel Embiid will be playing tonight, but Doc Rivers did say that he participated in shoot-around, and we will know when he knows, I suppose. So apologies for not having the answer to that question, but thank you for asking. And whenever we do have the answers, we will try to give them to you. Someone who did have the answers earlier today was Matisse Thybulle. I got to catch up with him about a couple stellar defensive performances of his and his reaction to Tobias Harris's game winner.
Hey, Matisse, good to see you. Tobias has been getting a lot of buzz since hitting that game winner on Wednesday. There's a lot of chatter about him maybe making his first All-Star team. So as his teammate, what did you think when that shot went in?
For everyone, I say, like, we all expected it to go in. And having the ball in Tobias's hands in a moment like that, I think we're all comfortable, and he proved why. And he's been playing great. Honestly, I don't even want to overthink it or try and dig too deep into it, because a man's putting on a show, and I think we should all just enjoy it.
And then looking back at your week, you gave Blake Griffin a lot of problems on Monday. And then Tobias told us after the Laker game that LeBron said he was giving you a lot more attention and trying to take better care of the ball when you were covering him. So what does it feel like to know you're becoming one of the more threatening, more respected defenders in this league?
It's good. I think it's a sense of, like, validation, but honestly, it just means that I have to keep getting better and get more creative because they're catching on to my tricks. So, I mean, it's all a challenge. I'm just trying to get better every day.
Matisse Thybulle, thanks so much.
Matisse Thybulle has been having a good stretch over the last couple of weeks. Great to hear his insights on his bud, Tobias Harris. And it's an interesting team, Lauren, the 76ers are going up against tonight in the Minnesota Timberwolves. Lots of young talent across that roster. Karl Anthony Towns is still in the midst of health and safety protocols after testing positive for COVID. Not sure if anyone out there saw the personal statement he released on social media about having to go through this. Listen, he is a terrific talent, and as if the situation with his mother passing due to COVID weren't enough, now for him to have to go through it as well. Just so unfortunate, and hopefully we'll see him back out there on the court soon. But he's now going to miss his 7th straight game, and D'Angelo Russell, he has missed the last couple of games, the quad injury. He's questionable. So for a slumping team like Minnesota, Lauren, to have to deal with mounting absences to some of their key players, that's a lot for Minnesota.
And it just reminds me, I mean, the Sixers are pretty healthy right now. They weren't a couple weeks ago, but you never know in this crazy season when you're going to be shorthanded, when you're going to be fully loaded. Hearts go out to the Timberwolves, who aren't available tonight, especially Karl Anthony Towns, who's had just an unimaginably difficult year. Hope he gets better soon. And we would love, of course, for the next time we meet the Timberwolves to see them fully loaded. But like you said, they will be pretty depleted in terms of star power, potentially without D'Angelo Russell as well. So you'd like to see the Sixers take hold of the momentum that they already have and get advantage in a win on the road.
You see the Timberwolves record. They are last in the Western Conference. They're being outscored by nearly 10 points per game. That is dead last out of 30 teams in the NBA. And while Towns and Russell, at least for Russell, his question is somewhat murky. He could play. They do have Anthony Edwards, this year's #1 overall pick. So that's a subplot worth following in tonight's matchup, just to see how a young player could go up against one of the better front lines in the league.
Always exciting to see. We're no stranger to #1 picks around here in Sixers land, and it'll be interesting to see how Edwards performs tonight. Malik Beasley has also been really strong for this team. So definitely what we learned in Detroit is you can't underestimate a team just because of their record. As Doc Rivers always says, NBA teams are NBA teams. Any team can beat any team on a good day. So hopefully the Sixers will be able to bring whatever extra secret stuff they had on Wednesday on the road with them, because this is a team they're not shy about the fact that they want to get better on the road. And this 3-game trip starting tonight in Minnesota, then in Indiana, and then in Charlotte is an opportunity to even up that road record and do exactly what they've wanted: improve, start getting those road wins, because there's no time like the present to do so.
Agreed. All right. It is time, literally and figuratively, for our Tissot keys to the game, Lauren. I feel like I've put you on the spot and made you go first the last couple games. I'll go first tonight. I don't think I'm going to need much time. My key, keep it simple. I get it. It's an NBA basketball team, but it's the 76ers and it's the Minnesota Timberwolves. Keep it simple. Do your thing. Be you. I think that's all I got to say.
I might even be able to squeeze my key into this existing 24 seconds. I said, set the tone on defense. This is a team that wants to be the best defensive team in the league. Now's your time to show that you can do it.
Love it. Perfect.
Is that allowed? Do we need to use the other 24 seconds for something else?
We spare Ryan Coletti and Trevor Gaffney a keystroke or two. I think we can accept that.
Keep it simple.
Yeah. I should say, though, keep it simple does not mean dummy down the playbook. Keep it simple in terms of your thought process going into this game. Like if the Sixers are the Sixers and they just go out and play their game and do the stuff they normally do, you would hope this is a winning proposition tonight.
And they have been very open about wanting to improve on the road. I really do believe that this trip is the opportunity for them to sort of turn the tides when it comes to road play. Now that they have the confidence of beating the Lakers, maybe they understand that there's no excuse to lose to lesser teams. So there's a big opportunity in these next 3 games. And I'm biased, but as always, I do believe that the Sixers will seize it.
Yeah, the Sixers are 3-5 in away games this year. And I'll be honest with you, Lauren, I don't really associate much of how they've performed on the road this season, especially with a couple games coming without Joel Embiid, another game in Brooklyn without Seth Curry. I don't really tie that into any of the struggles the team had last year on the road because it's in many ways an entirely different roster and an entirely different organization. That being said, I do think that perception-wise, this is a box that is yet to be filled in as far as like of the many things the 76ers have shown good so far this season. This would be a nice thing, or if they could just start to tick off some wins on the road, it's one less thing that if people are trying to poke holes in them in their resume and their body of work, it's just one less area that people can zero in on.
I hear you. And if you are still rocking with us on 7-6 Live, at this point, you're probably not one of the people that are truly picking apart this Sixers team. But I agree with what you said. A lot of the losses have come without Joel Embiid. They've happened to be on the road. But I would add that home court advantage isn't what it used to be. They are playing at the center, and clearly they are comfortable there. But the fans that really make the home court what it is for the 76ers, not there. And even for teams that have fans, they're not moving the needle the way that they could before. So I am intrigued to see around the whole league how home records and away records end up catching up to teams in this very strange fanless landscape.
It is a strange landscape, but one the 76ers so far have been traversing pretty well. They have game number 20 on the season tonight at Target Center against the T-Wolves. Lauren, awesome stuff. Thank you very much. Coletti, Trevor Gaffney, great job on the sticks. We'll talk to you Sunday when the 76ers take on the Pacers. Enjoy tonight's game. See ya.
Thanks, everybody.